Hello, gamers. Hello, noobs. For this regular game, I'm with a special guest Avalon Tourney MVP, Avalon Tourney winner, SH moderator. She's the Morgana of your dreams, if you're Percival, and of your nightmares, if you're Merlin. One of the tournament organizers, so I'd like to use this occasion to thank you. In the name of the whole community, we are all grateful for your work. The Lime Morgana, Goofy.
Oh man, what an introduction. I can't follow that.
All right, so this is a regular game. So let's go over the players. So 1.1 is Bangle Bangle. We have Baby, Eevee, Basic, Raph, and Treyway.
Yeah, this is an interesting mix. None of these players are complete beginners. There's definitely a variety of skill levels and experiences here. Um, Wrath is getting pretty rezzed by these picks so far, I feel.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I'm
1.3 is
really
interesting.
yeah, it's been a while, honest. I feel like we haven't seen that many flip picks this tournament. So it's an interesting one to see. I don't hate it. It puts basic in a really interesting position here, right? Because like if 1, 2, and 1, 3 are correct, then there should be one spy within those three players, meaning that Wang Resing Wrath gives basic kind of like should he just be spying? Like I think 1, 3 kind of forces basic to spy Wang in the world where M1s are correct. So it's an engine like I if I were basic right now, I'd like hate picking here because I wouldn't know what to do. I think especially if I was res. If I was res, I might like think that there was a spy in Baby and Eevee just because of the way that their picks sort of res Wrath and then put Wang against Basic a
Uh-huh.
little bit. Um,
This is
but
a
then that's
very
tricky.
difficult
Yeah,
1.4.
it really is. Yeah, and I think it's the sort of 1.4 that kind of forces Basic to like outroll a little bit. So I actually don't mind the stall because I think as every single roll, I would be stalling here, being like, "Help! I hate 1.4."
I would be off picking Vango with Eevee, maybe?
Yeah, I like that. I think yeah, because if you don't, my thought is if you're res here and you don't off pick Wang, then Wrath might just pick Wang back. And
Mm-hmm.
then you look super spied and like you're not an add to that, so it makes M2 a little bit weird for you. If you're a spy here, I mean, do what you want. Like it's a tricky one. If you're a spy here, I think you what do you even do? Like you're getting 2-5 no matter what. So I think as a spy, I'd just be trying to pick like the least incriminating thing right now.
To be frank, if this would be 1.5, like, if I would have to unpick someone right now, I would unpick Baby. Oh, Vandal and
Mm,
Baby. Because 1.3 is repicking 1.2, so I always think that the first person to pick something that was repicked is more Ras.
yeah. I don't hate that. It kind of reses Trey a little bit.
What do
Um,
we do here? Picking Baby and Vankel over Baby and Eve.
yeah.
Evie.
Well, what's dangerous is that if basics PR, then yeah, picking baby and oh, that's a
Hmm.
choice.
I don't know, because I like to see 1.5 unpick 1.4 when it should be done. Because there are some games where unpicking 1.4 is okay and it's logical, especially when 1.4 is saying, claiming that M1s are bad from your POV if you two would be Russ.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because if basic has info and is saying that Wang and baby isn't two res.
I'm just not sure if this is the point where you unpick 1.4 as Raf.
I don't think it makes sense. I'm really curious. I'm like, if Wrath is Merlin, he had other picks there that were pretty free.
I would honestly pick
Um,
Trey.
I mean, he could. So, like, Trey and Evie are never two spies at this stage if picks are correct. So he can just, if he's Merlin, he can take the 50-50 into Evie Trey and just pick the one that's res, and he won't get Merlin for it. If he's not Merlin, I don't really understand the reasoning behind picking basic. The thing I could think is, like he's an SH player. Like he has some reads. Maybe he just thought that basic seemed res for like stalling so long on 1-4 or something. But like again, I would stall on 1-4 as any roll because it's a really tricky pick. So
It is.
hard to say.
Yeah, game froze for me too. So they were talking actually at this 1.4 holding.
Yeah. Well, because Basic stalled for a bit and then Wrath
Mhm.
said test and Basic said, yeah, I'm thinking. And like, to be fair, it is a pick that you have to think on after that 1-2, 1-3 flip pick. And now we have no accuses, which
It's really hard to accuse this. So, because if it fails, Raf is looking really bad.
yeah, that's well, so what's interesting to me is that Wang slammed that. When to Wang's perspective, like that means that 1-2 and 1-3 pickers are what, two spies? Or spy with Trey, but one of them is like in any world where 2-2 is clean, two spies who don't have hammers set up clean. I tend to avoid thinking that spies play like that. I know there are some players who do play like that, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
really tough. It's
unusual.
really, really tough because if you can't get on missions, like you're just, you get a clean M2, you do a random crappy Danis, and then you just do a clean M4 and call it a day, and spies are struggling to shoot. Like you're not getting a lot of info out of that. And I think in this particular lobby of people, I don't necessarily think that they're at the point of having two spies who both pick M1s that set up clean.
I think
So if I
1.5
were Wang,
is
I would not be doing 2-2.
I think 1.5 is not the best pick because it puts a lot of pressure on Basic while he doesn't have like a clear pick as of right now. And this is probably the last time that Basic should be on the same team as Raf.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I would, if I were Basic here, I probably wouldn't keep Wrath on, but I also just like what are Basic's teams right now? If I
Like,
were VT picking 2-5, I would not like 2-2.
well, the thing is like he is really in a tough situation. He has no
Yeah.
picks.
Yeah. I do think in the interest of consistency, I might add Eevee just because when Wrath doesn't if I'm Basic, my 1-4 is kind of rezzing Eevee.
Mm-hmm. He's adding
Okay.
baby.
I mean, if he's hard spying Wang, then adding baby isn't terrible.
Did you learn from game 7? So which one was game 7?
I
I
have no
don't know.
idea.
Oh, I know which one was that. It's probably the one with Mayor and Geo.
Yeah. Um, I mean, that I'm not totally surprised that that's blue. I think like Wang chatting pre-pick is interesting because like she picked something that's bad to Basics point of view if M1s are clean.
Mm-hmm. And Raf is removing basic. That's very possible. But I just don't think basic without co-spy. I would reject.
I don't know. I mean, if you think M2 is clean, I think this is a good app, but I think this is the sort of thing that like if you're Merlin and you know M2 is clean, you might just app this to like
Mm.
get to get to M4. Not worry about it.
I'd probably pick zigzag if I would Raf.
Yeah. I mean, if I were VT on that mission, I would
Solo
reject.
Appy.
Cool.
This is not the
That's
blue
honestly
man.
not great for Wang because like what is Wang claiming as her team
Well, she's
right
being
now?
involved into the game
Yeah.
for some reason. Well, I don't hate her. It's just like she's just chilling, doing nothing so far. She could be Marilyn. I know that Vank plays like this. When she's Marilyn, she likes to just lay low because she's
Yeah, I mean
scared
it's
to
a
out
great
Marilyn.
strategy if your team is playing right and like if I'm Merlin and my team is doing things right, I am mute. I am not saying crap because I want to
Mm.
just be as hidden as possible, let them do all the work. And I'm just going to follow and only pick things that I could also be picking as a BT. This is an interesting 3-2 because Basic did 2-5. Basic added baby.
Yeah,
Of
and
all the people that he could have picked, which is a lot of people,
I
he
kind of
picked
like this
baby.
reject. Like, if MTU is third, I like Vangle. He could be a spy raging because, she wants to see more, but if MTU fails, I like Vangle.
Yeah. I don't like 3-2 as a pick, so I like Treyway being removed after that. Although putting Wrath back on when Wrath picked that
Yep.
3-1 is choice. And when Wrath picked Basic on 1-5, when
Maybe
he
left
didn't
hand side.
to.
Oh, maybe left hand side isn't picked because of 1.4.
Yeah, could be.
But then still, I feel like the more picks you see, the more likely you're to accuse him once.
Yeah. Well, the more like space you have to accuse them because you can be like, well, that was a team, but it got rejected. Like, why did it get rejected?
And
Oh,
this
that gets
passes,
apt.
and it fails.
Yeah,
And
that's literally not surprising at all.
I hope that MTU fails. Fuck? Question mark?
That chat is so bad.
I mean, yeah, this just instantly caught my attention. I'm gonna highlight Vangal. This seems so fake and
I mean,
forced and
she's chatting like
unnecessary.
a spy who knows that M2 is clean.
Yeah, I want to talk with you guys because we are about to finish missions. This is exactly what I feel from her.
Yeah. I do think that if M2 is clean, we're gonna
Vangal
get a
doesn't off up.
lot.
Oh dear, it's clean. Vangal doesn't off up. It would give her hammer.
I mean, I'm interested to see, what. Yeah, I think that's a good pick from Evie. That looks pretty like he's setting up. If M2 was clean, he's keeping that. He's making sure that's clean.
Evie should have approved.
But
Well,
what is it? Is it anti Treyway Wang?
probably left hand side rough.
Yeah.
We fucking caught Vangal Bangle instantly.
I mean, like I said, 2-2 is outing based on those M1s. Like you shouldn't be picking that as a VT.
Wow, Vangal
Uh,
is so earnest.
yeah, so and it is with Trey, and I was right that Treyway's 3-2 makes no sense when basic is adding baby. Um, cool. So spies kind of outed themselves, which is going to make shot a bit hard for them, I think.
Oh dear.
Um,
I would shoot in rough and basic. Because of 1.5 and like spies weren't loved that much. Maybe because Merlin
so
is involved in here.
it's an interesting one. I really think that most of them could kind of be I mean,
Oh yeah, that's
1-3.
definitely
So
true.
Evie's res picking 1-3, which makes 1-4 for basic very hard, and basic does manage to pick correctly. I don't know if that makes basic Merlin. It definitely makes him a candidate. 1-5, I sort of think is probably not Merlin because if Wrath is Merlin, he has a free pick on Evie after
That's right.
1-4.
But
And
he
Wrath can frame the absolute crap out of basic, slamming Evie on 1-5.
but
But
then I
also, I
mean
don't know if Wrath knows that. So
exactly. I'm not sure if he knows that, and it also seems that Vang is assassin, which he just might not know.
yeah.
Basic? I would probably shoot basic. I would shoot in basic and rough. Like if it's Eevee, would be Eevee. Could be anyone. Like let's be honest. In games
I
like
do.
this, it could be anyone.
mm, I worry a bit about Wrath to Basic, but I think in Wrath to Basic, 3-1 just gets apt because who cares? So I don't really think it's that.
In
Um,
rough to basic, 3-1 gets apt. So two spies, I would like to take their votes out of equation. So we only have Eevee who rejects. And he can reject because can he reject? He
well,
cannot.
Evie is the res who wasn't on M2, right? So Evie doesn't necessarily know.
Oh, he can reject because of 1.5.
Yeah.
So sure, even like 3.1 is very PR-ish. It's such a strange, stupid pick. It would be Merlin, but 1.5 is a meme.
Well, the thing is, if it's basic, then 3/3 Percy apt with 2 Merlins on.
Well, I would be kinda more focused on the Percival who unpercied.
Yeah.
Because you have 2.5, there's one Merlin on there. I'm gonna assume that there's Merlin. So this is the Merlin's team.
Yeah.
So you just kinda
Well, I think the
unpercy.
question is whether you think Percy's on that mission or not. Because Percy off mission, like Evie could know it's Percy. It just vibes. It feels like Evie might be Merlin.
Evie Merlin.
But there's
This is
like
gonna be
literally
the
no logic
vibes.
to that. Literally just vibes.
Yeah, this is gonna be the vibes shot.
Yeah.
And then Evie rejecting 3.1 is Merlin.
Why not? I think it sort of makes you more Merlin because it's like not that great of a pick after Wrath specifically did 1/5. Like Wrath doing 1/5 and then doing that 3/1. Like I probably wouldn't app it either. And you have other ways to get Spy's Hammer or to get Res Hammer for M4.
Hmm.
The thing with 2/5 is that like basic is really only ever picking a res there to add. Like I'm never picking Wang there. And if I'm basic and I've decided I'm gonna play as if my own M1 is correct, I'll pick baby. If I'm basic and I'm looking at that flip pick thinking that Evie's kind of resing baby through it, I'm also picking baby. If I look at that and think, well, if Wang's a spy, she's probably not a spy. I mean, she could be a spy with one of baby or Evie, which makes Trey res, but that's the only world in which Trey is res.
What the fuck
So
is
I do
Roth
think
doing? This is what I'm thinking about. Like, if he's Merlin doing 1.5, then this is like, here, do the work for me.
yeah, I mean, I do kind of think if Wrath is Merlin, I think Wrath knows enough about Avalon to know that it is a much freer game for him if he just sets up clean by picking Evie or baby. And probably Evie, because Evie again is a super,
So,
super free pick on that 1/5. And if he picks Evie, then basic can just self ab on M2. But yeah, so I kind of don't really think.
I should 2.5 then, because he ended the game. You know, why is he adding baby? Question mark. Because he's a
Yeah.
woman. Because he's res.
I mean, I would have spied Wang for talking there. So I think if I'm basic and I'm any role but Merlin, on that I'm looking for
Didn't say anything
who can I add
during M2s.
before basic picked, she says, all right, basic, and she starts talking to basic, and it's like, why are you talking to basic there? You picked 2/2. You lost the right to talk when you slammed 2/2 when it is a nonsense team to your perspective. So like if I'm basic picking 2.5 as any non-Merlin role, I'm already spying Wang. I'm not going to say anything in chat, but I'm not going to listen to her because I'm going to think she's a spy.
Do you think it's the nonsense team from Bangles Beauty?
Oh yeah, because in any team where Wang, Basic, and Wrath is 3 res, that means that between Trey, Baby, and Evie, none of whom have an M1 or M2 hammer, there are 2 spies, and they both picked correct M1s.
Oh, so, yeah, 1.2, 1.3.
Yeah.
So you're just killing. So Vangal should be killing the teams.
So
Right hand side and basic doesn't make sense. This is one of the teams. Square doesn't make sense because then 1.3 is a nonsense pick.
yeah, like I mean, it's not
Hmm.
it's not a it's not a super strong read. It's just a read that I like to make. That if I'm looking at who has hammers and who's setting up clean, and the team that I'm building has both spies setting up clean for res, I'm not gonna love it. And I especially when that 1/5 happens, which also if M1s are correct, that 1-5 spies me if I'm Wang. So I'm not gonna add to it because that just like makes me look like a spy.
Like,
Or if it is clean, then it makes me look like PR who knows that it's clean, which is weird. But I think to add to it and then to get on chat and be like, let me talk to the person who's picking 2-5, like I'm spying the crap out of Wang on 2-5, so I want to know like what the deal is. Like if okay, Wang's assassin.
oh, look, you don't have to talk pre-crit. This is saying, don't pick her.
Is it, or is it
Or
just
maybe,
say like
maybe
because he's
not. Never
talking to
mind.
her?
Yes, this is kind of arresting her.
Yeah.
Now I've changed my mind.
I don't know. I mean, I still wouldn't shoot Wrath.
I would
Let's see what
not.
they're saying
I
at
agree.
this
I wouldn't
point.
shoot Ralph at all.
Yeah.
Okay, what are we talking about? Basic SN roll. I feel I have basic GM as of right now.
Yeah, I think you did because of...
I was picking 2.5, which is like, we don't have a shot. And basic kind of like slammed clean. Or whatever. If not
Yeah.
basic, I would kill Eevee.
I think I would for that, yeah. Oh, give me 1 second.
Eevee didn't send a single... Oh, he sent like exactly a single message. Well, actually,
Yeah.
two.
I mean,
Smart.
most people didn't talk enough, but they also didn't need to. If I'm a res in this game, I'm not saying a word. I'm just spying Wang for 2-2 and for trying to chat to basic and figuring out who's least likely spies with Wang and going off of that.
Alright, never mind. I'm just gonna tell you something that this gives me the same vibes as when Eevee was Merlin in the first day of the
Yeah,
tournament.
that's what I was saying earlier. Like, because I know this is how Eevee play. Like, if Eevee can
God.
say nothing, like Eevee will say nothing and just let the game happen.
But he says this XD is like, oh guys, I'm also into the game. Don't talk to Vang, please, XD.
Could be.
And he's talking to Baby.
Yeah.
This is the classic Merlin chat, like, hey guys, I'm Merlin. How are you?
So is Wang saying I expected to be picked on what, on 1-5? Why would Wang ever be picked on 1-5
Wait a
after
second,
1-4?
did she actually say that?
Yeah, I think that's what she just said.
I
If you
can't
scroll
be.
down. Yeah, I can't really be picked after 1-4.
Well,
Um,
Vang, if you're listening, and you probably are, you shouldn't be picked on
but
1.5 for sure.
yeah, well, so maybe she's saying that she thought she would be picked before 1-4 happened, but
Yeah, but
then
then I still think she's not the one to be picked.
yeah. I mean, my thought there also is that like if she's thinking about 1-4, like 1-3 is kind of is the pick that causes 1-4. Because I think if I'm Eevee on 1-4, I could pretty freely just off pick Baby and Wang,
You have actually
which
two.
gives
I feel
basic
like you
more
have two
information.
picks. It's Vangle and Eevee,
Yeah.
Vangle and Babies. I guess also okay. But all of them kind of remove Vangle from 1.5. And yeah, I mean, she mentioned that, but I don't know if you remember, we were talking when the 1.4 was being stalled. Who would we pick if we would have to pick right now? So this is exactly the same point that Vank is making, but I think we agreed that it would be Baby to be unpicked.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so here's that. And then, well, I'm just a little bit afraid that it's gonna take them 30 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is I wouldn't shoot Baby here mostly just because of 1-2. Like I think I'd only ever shoot in this game in Eevee and Basic, which maybe is wrong. But my general thought whenever I see someone on pick, although granted it is a hammer, but if someone on picks an M1 and then the next person doesn't do an off pick that includes that person, I always read that as like them kind of soft resing that person.
Yeah,
So like when I
exactly.
saw Baby's 1-2, I was like, oh, Baby's like kind of soft resing Wang with that. And if Wang's a spy, then like Baby's not Merlin. So doesn't have to be true, but something very loosely.
I feel like we are on the same page here.
Yeah.
Eevee and Basic are my definite two shots, and I GM'd Eevee because of the chat. The
Yeah.
chat read. Rav could be actually Percival doing 3.1 to on Percy.
Yeah, definitely could. Or trying to frame basic. Because I do think that like Wrath has kind of done a decent job framing basic effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
If you look at it,
When did missions end? How much longer do they
it
have to shoot?
it ended on 12, so they are
Okay.
13 minutes in.
We're about halfway through, yeah.
So I'm gonna ask you a small question that I ask to everyone that I feature in my videos, pretty much everyone. Who do you think is the best Avalon player?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, honestly, I would say Maxi, genuinely. Because I think Maxi, like in terms of, there are lots of really, really good players. But for me, I think like Maxi is able to, like he has the combination of reads and like game understanding that I think is really, really strong and something that I definitely respect and look up to.
Hmm.
Because I think it's like that's what I love about Avalon, right? Is that it's not just like a social reads game. There is this huge logical component of like looking through missions and knowing what's happening and knowing how people are communicating things. But then there's also this social component where like you can't just do the logic of the game. You have to be able to make reads and trust that. I remember playing a game once with Maxi where I was Percy and 1-1, I think it was Mouse maybe was a VT who off picked 2 res and Maxi just on picked a spy and then said like one line of chat. I don't even remember what the line of chat was, but like said literally that one thing. And I instantly knew Maxi's entire team. I knew that Maxi was telling me who the one spy was, that like Mouse's pick was 2 res. And I just knew clean from like 1-2. It's like, this is the
Uh,
easiest game of Avalon I've ever played in my life. But I think being able to like kind of use picks and player knowledge and logic in that way, and like Maxi's not the only player that's capable of this. Like, I've seen Pingu play like this. Arm is really, really strong as well. Um, Manu to some extent plays like this too. Um, it's like how I learned to play basically, was kind of watching that play style of like,
hmm.
okay, I'm gonna, learn the logic, learn how to interpret picks, learn how to communicate with picks and actually like world build and like learn how to reject M3s and things like that. But then also the logic, the social aspect of that, of just having really strong social reads on people that you're playing with.
Yeah, so I feel like the missions, the whole process is like speaking a language that conveys information, and you have to learn that language.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And it's such an interesting thing because there are definitely people who interpret that language differently. And then that's where you end up getting a lot of like essentially flame wars when res lose because people are like, but you did this and it meant this. And it's like, well, no. I mean, if you think about the first special game I played in this tournament where like I rejected a team that I thought was dirty because I thought that Ave Hunter was a spy. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
huge reject. Like it wasn't a reject that made sense. It was a really logically viable team, but I did not like Ave, so I rejected it. And then Duck, who was Merlin, made a comment being like, "Well, if Clean was rejected," and so I was sitting there being like, "Oh, I messed up. Like I clearly like I rejected Clean. That's what that means."
I
And then
do
Meir
remember that
also read
game.
that and was like, "Oh, you rejected Clean." And so the two of us were both sitting there pushing a dirty team as the clean team because we were like, Merlin told us that this is like this is clean.
I
Yeah,
remember
and I
that
think
game.
yeah, and it's but like to Duck's perspective, like it was completely reasonable to say like, no, if I were VT, I would be wondering if clean had been rejected. But I think my thought there overall is like, well, if you're a VT, then and you think I'm on your team rejecting that, like doing that reg because it was a pretty big reject, like then you should think that I'm PR and follow me
Yeah,
if I'm
definitely.
right. Yeah, but I completely agree with that. So much of it is this language that you have to kind of learn to speak, and I think it's part of why it takes such a long time and such a big number of games to really get to a point where like as a VT you're able to do the things that other people can only do as PR. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what that I remember like thinking was so cool about Avalon was, I think it was like early 2021 where I sort of hit that point of like 54% VT win rate, where all of a sudden it was like being a VT made sense. And I was like, oh my God, this is what people are saying with picks. And now I get it. But I remember starting to play and seeing players like Arm and Manu and Maxi and Pingu and Mayer and like everyone, they like already knew how to play like that. And it was like, well, they could be Merlin or they could just be VT because they're that good.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that language analogy because in normal language we also can say the same stuff but be interpreted very differently by different people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you have to recognize like the intention of what somebody's trying to communicate, but also like acknowledge what that means to the players and that that's not always going to be the same thing. I mean, like doing all of this moderating of, social deduction communities, I think that's the biggest thing I see, that like somebody intends to say one thing, but then it comes across a different way. And that's where like so much of conflict arises, is people just like not understanding what somebody's trying to say. And that's how Res lose Avalon games.
So how do you like your moderating?
I find it really interesting. It's a lot sometimes, honestly. I think it's sometimes it's genuinely kind of heartbreaking because you're like, people could just choose to be nicer. um,
Do you
but
find that people find it hard to admit their mistakes?
yeah, generally, I think there's a tendency I've noticed for people to sort of like want to defend themselves even when they're in the wrong. And I know that like I even personally like feel that way sometimes too, where like I'll mess up and I'll be like, no, 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 and like try and defend my, and then like later I'll be like, oh, I
Mm.
was wrong. Like I should own this. Um, but it's hard.
What's
It's
the
yeah,
what's the
hard to
funniest
do.
case? What's your favorite case that you moderated?
We often get people on Secret Hitler who like make mistakes, but then they say really silly, like cat ate my homework level excuses. Like there was somebody who was Hitler who passed the fifth blue and then said something like, "Oh, like my brother came in and played like clicked on the cards for me." We were just like, "No, he didn't." Like obviously that didn't happen.
Oh dear.
So there's lots of things like that.
It sounds like excuses I was making when I was very, very young and I was playing like computer games. I did something stupid and I would say that my brother came and like typed this message.
Yeah. I think there was another one where somebody like there are lots of it is also interesting because sometimes I forget like how young some people are. Like sometimes somebody will like AFK from a game and then they'll be like, "Oh, sorry, like my mom called. We have dinner."
Mm.
Like I haven't lived with my parents in like 15 years. Um,
Yeah, and those
yeah.
games, like social deduction games, they can be very, very toxic because you have to put your trust into people and you can like be put a lot of effort into your argumentation, and everything you're doing, and someone just like might not see your trust, and this frustrates you. But you don't you have to like think that you could be talking to someone way younger who is like, you know a little bit different in like this emotional aspect. They're still
Mm,
developing themselves.
yeah, definitely. Um, Yeah, I think I see that. I also see, sometimes with like cultural and language barriers too, where there are people who just like don't understand that something that like in their culture might be totally normalized can come off as like a different context in like a different to somebody who like grew up in a different environment.
So there's a lot. And
Yeah.
also about this tourney, because I feel like this tourney was about not to happen. So what happened that it
Blame
actually
Manu.
happened?
Literally blame Manu. No, I mean what happened was I was in the UK and Manu was like, "Let's do tournament these dates." And I was like,
Hmm.
"Well, I do all of the preparatory work for the tournament. I have a Google Drive folder with all of the tournaments from tournament 3 onwards, which is when Manu and I took over and started running tournament. And I was like, look, we can like if you want to set the dates for that, like go for it, but like I can't help you with any of the work."
Hmm.
And lo and behold, with me not helping, none of the work got done. So
Oh
I got
geez.
back. and was like, we can push it back, but like I'm really busy with work. Like I run sports programs for kids, and I also work for the Pandemonium Institute, which is the company that made Blood on the Clock Tower, which is my favorite social
Oh,
deduction game at the moment. Sorry, Avalon. But yeah, so between those two, I just had a ton of work on my plate. So I was like, well, I can make this work, but like I'm gonna need like a week or two when I get back from the UK because I'm going to be doing all of this outside of working like really, really long days. And so it was more just a matter of like I probably personally would have preferred for the tournament to be like a week later, but Manu was like, no, let's do it this week, and then we pushed it back, and then he hasn't even been around anyway. So yeah, that's the answer. Is just for once we can actually say like blame Manu, but no, I mean he is at the same time like been so instrumental in so many of these tournaments happening. The two of us together like put together basically all of the resources that we run tournament off of now. I also like I very much owe like a ton to Star Crush and Secret and Sad Nixon
hmm.
this tournament for putting the bot together. There are so many people who have put the tournament together and done so much work to like make it happen, and it really like it takes a village is such a silly saying, but like it really does. It takes so many people to make the tournament run. And I am eternally grateful to like every single person. Like Rose and Basic have put in a ton of time modding this tournament as well. Woe has stepped up to mod some games. Like there are people in the community, like Pingu and Tom have stepped up when we need it just to stream games if we need it. Maxie's been around for the last couple tournaments helping to mod. So it really is like just totally a team effort, and it takes a lot from a lot of people. And it is a really big undertaking, and I think especially like this tournament for me, it feels way bigger than all the last ones, just because like for the last three, Manu and I did everything together, and this
Hmm.
one's really just been like me having to kind of step up and like make it happen. um, but it's also been really fun, and it's really rewarding, and it's cool to see people getting like really into it, and lots of people doing like the Merlin guessing on the bot, and just
Yeah.
being invested in their teams. So
The
yeah.
bot has certainly been a very, very cool addition. I see people like checking fantasy leaderboards all the time. And it's the people who are interested in fantasy are asking those questions to the bot, and but the bot giving the leaderboard is like everyone can see that. So I see people like, oh, this is my team on the leaderboard. Oh, and they start getting invested into the stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's also just like a lot easier than going on the internet separately to like check the tournament sheet. Because, we maintain the sheet, we do everything on the sheet, but it's much nicer, I think, when everything can be kind of contained on Discord because people have to be on Discord to check in with their teams and like talk about the tournament, anyways. Yeah. Oh
Oh,
man, I'm
they are
curious.
about to shoot. They are
It looks
about to
like they're going to
shoot.
shoot basic. Yeah, they've got like 5 minutes left at this point, I think.
It was
Um,
12. Yeah, it's 5 minutes exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Basic is a good shot. Basic's kind of the stat shot here, like he picks a good clean 2-5, which I think he can do as non-Merlin.
They are shooting
Yeah,
in
I don't
top. They
know.
are actually shooting in rough and basic, and we moved on to basic and EV.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that there are lots of viable shots this game.
Oh yeah, but there's this
So
saying,
it's
that when two spies have two different people and one is in the intersection, people very often like compromise to shoot that person.
yeah,
So like I say it's EV and basic, you say rough and basic, so we shoot basic? Question mark. Let's go.
yeah.
Oh,
Curious to
they are
see who it
actually
is.
shooting right
Yeah.
now. Did we social read? Do you want me to show? I'm actually gonna DM the bot, so I get the points.
So you get your points.
Yeah, S GMEV basic nerd. They are actually shooting basic.
I mean, I really don't think it's a bad shot. Like
It's
Basic picks
better
a
than
clean two
rough.
five.
For sure, better than rough.
Yeah.
And we fucking
Yep. We
solved.
called it.
We solved.
Yeah. I mean, I like that it started with vibes, but then we did go back and say, like here are the reasons why. It's the chat, it's the reasoning why it's not basic or wrath.
So
Baby
funny.
didn't really do anything to get shot. I think, that's a strong game from Rez. I think you see it's a tough one. Again, I think any time when spies do things that sort of inadvertently or not end up making them look more like spies, it's going to make things easier for Res. But I think, Basic has a really good pick on 2-5, and that helps a lot. That makes it an easier game for the Res team.
And you see, we can see that Basic as Percival, he unpercied on 3.2. This is exactly what we were looking for Percival to unpercy. And he's adding Baby because of 1.3.
Yeah.
Funnily enough. Alright, I guess this is it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is a lot of fun. And thanks for doing these videos. Like, I think they've been really, really appreciated by the community.
It's been really great making them. Alright, see you guys next time.